नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया Bhagavate Uttame Shloke Bhaktir Bhakti Naishtaki Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pashyati Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So thank you everyone for joining us today on this very beautiful day outside. It depends how we look at it. For some people, they really like the snow, and they were not very happy when we were seeing an early spring. But it's not very easy to come on time in this type of weather, so thank you for joining. So before we begin, I'd like to thank the temple management for giving me this opportunity and take the blessings from all of you so that we can speak something meaningful and valuable today. So we're reading from Canto 1, or chapter 6, verse 34, 35, and 36. So Narad Muni will be concluding his conversations with Vyasadeva today. So before we start going over the verses today, as always, we can do a quick recap of how we got here. Anyone wants to do a recap? So what was Vyasadeva's problem? Why did Narada Muni come to him? Someone knows? Yeah.
He was not happy with his work being done and
Yes.
feeling very depressed.
He was not having that satisfaction. Even after writing everything, he was still feeling like something is missing. So Narad Muni, being his spiritual master, his Gurudev, he came to assist him. And how did Narad Muni assist him? By explaining his own past activities, his own personal experiences. And he walked him through his entire life, the past few lifetimes. How he was the son of a maidservant, how when he was only 5 years old, his mother passed away, and he went searching for Krishna, searching for self-realization. And then in the last week, we read the verses that after Narad Muni practiced the devotional service, he was able to achieve a transcendental body, which was free from material miseries and problems. And again, I think in 1.6.33, Narad Muni is glorifying the chanting of the holy names and how by doing transcendental service, he was able to achieve self-realization, and how he is able to see Krishna, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in every moment in his life. So today we will continue from text 34. Etadiyatura chittanam matra sparshe chayamuhu bhava sindhu plavo drishto haricharyanuvarnanam etadiyatura chittanam matra sparshe chayamuhu Bhava Sindhu Plavo Dashto Haricharyuna Varnanam. We'll do a word-to-word translation. Etat, this, he, certainly, Atura Chittanam, of those whose minds are always full of cares and anxieties. Matra, objects of sense enjoyment. Sparsha, senses. Ichaya, by desires. Muhu, always. Bhava Sindhu, the ocean of nescience. Plava, both drishta, experienced, Haricharya, activities of Hari, the personality of Godhead, Anuvarnanam, constant recitation. The English translation is, it is personally experienced by me meaning Narada Muni, that those who are always full of cares and anxieties due to desiring contact of the senses with their objects can cross the ocean of nescience on a most suitable boat, the constant chanting of transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead. So in the verse it is said that Atura Chittanam, which is of those whose minds are always full of cares and anxiety. So Narad Muni is describing that us, the conditioned souls, are always full of anxiety. Anyone here who would say that they do not have anxiety? Or anyone here who would say that they are full of anxiety? One person is, two, three people are full of anxiety. But it's true, every person, if we are in this material world, we always have some kind of anxiety. And it doesn't matter which stage of life we are in. We can be as little as a child and as old as anyone. There will always be some kind of anxiety within our hearts. And why are we anxious? So in the next line it says, Matra Sparshechaya Muhu, which is when the senses, our senses, are coming in contact with the sense objects, we get desires. When we have desires, those desires result in anxiety because our desires are not always fulfilled. Even when they are fulfilled, it is never fulfilled up to the extent that we had hoped they would be fulfilled. So material desires causes us to have anxiety. Can you think of any material desire that is generally desired by everyone? Something that most people always want to have, money. Dollars. Specifically dollars. They're better than rupees, I think. So money, yes, money is something that majority of us would like to have. So now if you think deeper about the concept of money a little bit, imagine someone does not have any money. Do you think they will be anxious? Yes. So if a person does not have money, they will have anxiety. Now imagine that person the next day wins the lottery. And now suddenly he has a lot of money. He will not know what to do. So do you think at that time he will be anxious?
Oh yes, more anxious than before.
He'll be more anxious than before.
Where I should invest that.
How can I grow it? Yes? How can you protect it? Yeah. So now that brings us to the third point. Imagine that same person has now lost all his money. Now will he be anxious? Yes. He will still be anxious. So in every scenario with money, whether you have it, you don't have it, or you want more of it, there will be anxiety caused within us. But money is not something that we can just ignore. We are in this material world, in this conditioned world, so we do need it in order to sustain ourselves. So this is a design of the material world. By design itself, it is constructed in a way that it will cause us anxiety. Even if we try to get out of it, even still, there will always be anxiety. And that is why Bhagavad Gita talks about the material world as Ashashvatam Dukhalayam. So Dukhalayam, of course, it means place of misery. And Ashashvatam, of course, temporary, that can be good or bad. But that is the design of the material world, that it is always causing us anxiety. Because even if you notice, in not right now, but in the springtime, you can see a lot of pigeons or birds. Whenever they're eating, if you notice, a pigeon is never satisfied and just eating calmly. Whenever he's eating, he's always looking around. Because he's always worried that, someone might come and catch me. Maybe a dog will come or a cat will come or something. So he's always having that anxiety. we as human beings are lucky that we don't have that much anxiety, that kind of anxiety. But the interesting thing is, you never see the pigeon being anxious from other pigeons. It is always anxious from another species. But we as human beings are the only ones that are always anxious of our same species. We're always worried about other human beings. And most of the time, it's not even very far away the human beings. It's mostly our own family and relatives that we're mostly worried about. They're the ones who can always cause us a lot of anxiety. In the third statement, it said, Bhava Sindhu. Bhava Sindhu means ocean of misery, ocean of nescience. So then it is said that because we are in contact with sense objects, we have desires, we are getting anxious, and it is almost as if we are in the ocean of misery. So if someone is drowning in an ocean, how do they get rescued? Any ocean, if they're drowning, what should they need? A boat or a ship. There'll be helicopter for Prabhu because he's elevated soul. So like Gajendra, Krishna came on Garuda. So Krishna will come in his helicopter and save. But for us normal human beings, a ship will do. Yes. So it is said that a boat, and it is mentioned here, Plavo Drishto. So a boat, and not just any boat. It is said that Hari Charya, the activities of Hari, the personality of Godhead, Anu Varnanam, and constant recitation. So they can be rescued from the constant discussion of the description of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because when we are constantly reciting Krishna Katha in the association of devotees, one can be saved from the onslaught of material existence. And there are a lot of verses even in Bhagavad Gita that are explaining this concept. Chapter 10, verse 9, Matchitta Madgat Prana Bodhyanta Parasparam Kathayantasya Mam Nityam Dushanti Cha Ramanti Cha. So Kathayantasya Mam Nityam, they're always engaged, pure devotees of Krishna are always engaged in conversing about Krishna. And because they're always engaged in conversing about Krishna, they're able to find that satisfaction and peace. And in the purport, Prabhupada also explains that senses and the contact with sense objects cannot actually be stopped. So we made the first point that senses should not be in contact with sense objects. Now how do we actually stop that senses from getting in contact with sense objects? Krishna has given us eyes. The eyes always wants to look at something beautiful. From the inside, the snow looks so beautiful. But then you have to go clean your car in the driveway, then it's not that beautiful. But the eyes are always looking for something beautiful. Same thing with our tongue. The tongue always wants to taste something delicious. I'm sure the Prashadam downstairs has some sweets. So we always want to have sweets. His Grace Amrendra Prabhu gives this example that if you ever want to have a gulab jamun or a rasgulla, how long do you think the taste of that sweet or of a gulab jamun stays within our mouth?
6 seconds.
6 seconds. He has counted it. It's perfect. It's timed it. I would have thought he'll say, few seconds and not 6 seconds. So that's true. It is not a long time. But on the basis of that few seconds of taste, there's an entire billion-dollar industry that is present. And it's not just running, it is actually growing and thriving. Just because of that taste. So, in a sense, we are not able, it is very difficult to stop our senses from getting in contact with sense objects within this material world. So what can we do? Because someone might say that, well, I'll just sit in a room, I will close my eyes, so I won't see anything, I won't do anything. And then I'll be able to control my senses. But even if you're able to control our physical senses, we cannot control our mind. Our mind is still running. Right? Our mind is still running. And again, Arjuna says in chapter 6, Chanchalam Yamana Krishna, Pramati Balavadradam, Tashyaham Nigraham Manye, Vayu Evasu Dushkaram. So he's saying that it is easier for me to control the wind than controlling my mind. I mean, controlling the wind is not easy. I don't think I cannot do, maybe you can do. But controlling the wind, he's saying, I'm so powerful I can control the wind, but I cannot control this chanchal mind. So it's nearly impossible to control the mind, and even if we are able to control it a little bit, by putting a lot of effort, by doing a lot of meditation, we're able to control our senses up to a certain extent, the return that we get is never enough. Like we talked, if we are able to achieve some sense gratification, the result is never as good. If someone is here from a finance background, they talk about ROI, return on investment. So it is never proportional to how much work we put in. Does anyone here think that they're getting paid a lot, like too much in their work? Everyone always complains that I'm not getting paid enough. No one ever goes to their performance review at the end of the year and says, I should take a pay cut. You're paying me too much. And up to a certain extent, that's true. We are spending, imagine someone is living 100 years, which is again very infrequent these days, but if someone is living 100 years, they spend 25 to 30% of their lives acquiring education so that they can do a job, which is first of all very hard to find. And if they do find a job, most likely they will not like it. And if they do like it, they will eventually get bored of it. So there is no satisfaction even in doing that. So we spend all this time and effort, but our return on investment is very less. So then Narada Muni is saying that by his personal experience, he's saying that satisfaction for such frustrated, conditioned souls can be achieved by always chanting the names of Krishna. The point is not that we have to stop engaging our senses with sense objects. The point is that we have to still engage our senses, but in a different subject matter. So just not with sense objects. And I can guarantee it that if you are engaging it in Krishna consciousness, the return of interest is a lot more. Because what does Krishna say? We said mat chitta gat mat prana. He's saying that Krishna is just saying to remember him. I was listening to a lecture from His Holiness Keshav Maharaj, and he said that when he was young, he used to go to the temple with his parents. And he would go to the temple. After some time, he asked one of the devotees, how can I progress in Krishna consciousness? And the devotee just said, just remember Krishna. And Maharaj taught, that's it. I just have to remember Krishna. I don't have to do anything else. I don't have to do elaborate deity worship and do this and that. And the devotee said, no, you just have to remember Krishna. And Maharaj said, it was like 30 years ago, and I still have issues. I still have problems in remembering Krishna. Because it's not easy. Every one of us here, there's so many devotees with chanting beads in their hands. We try to remember Krishna just for 2 hours a day by doing 16 rounds. But still within those 2 hours, it is very difficult to remember Krishna. But if someone is able to do it, so we should still try. So Krishna is just saying that just try to remember to me. Just try to remember me. And that is enough. And I will take care of the rest. So that is, you don't have to study for it. You don't have to go to school and do your master's and PhD. Even a small child of 3 years old can also remember Krishna. So in that sense, the return of investment is very good. So that is what Narada Muni is saying. And Prabhupada explains in the purport more. He's saying that instead of relishing activities from the material world, we should just change that subject matter to Krishna. So for example, we all want entertainment in our lives. Right? There's always this new movie coming out, Bollywood, Hollywood, whichever it is. And we all want to see what is going on. And all these movies, they all have same few themes. Either be a love story, maybe a family drama. Prabhus will like all the action movies, right? But if you look in our scriptures, and we don't have to look too far, but we're able to find all these themes even within our scriptures. If you just take Mahabharata, most people know about the Mahabharata. You can find all these themes that you see in the movies, you can find all these themes in the Mahabharata as well. Lots of family drama. Right?
Lots of action too.
Lots of action, of course.
Also romance too.
There's a lot of love stories as well. You know, Krishna and Rukmini, you know, how he's stealing her and everything. There's so much, any theme you can think of, you can find that in the Mahabharata. So that is all Narad Muni is saying. So we don't have to stop trying to control our senses to not look for this entertainment, but just look for this entertainment in a way that it is related to Krishna consciousness. It is related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to Krishna. And in that way, you are being entertained and you're also progressing in Krishna consciousness. Because Prabhupada used to say, you know, just add a little Krishna in your lives. That is all we have to do. So someone might come and say that this is all good and fine, but I can control my senses by doing yoga and meditation. I'm able to control my senses by doing yoga and meditation, then why do I need to be involved in devotional service? Because that is the whole point. We need to control our senses. So if you go to the next verse, Narada Muni is explaining that in the next verse. Okay. Yamadevir Yogapate Kamalova Hato Muhu Mukunda Sevaya Yadvat Tatatmadhana Samyati. So the English translation is, it is true that by practicing restraint of the senses by the yoga system, one can get relief from the disturbances of desire and lust. But this is not sufficient to give satisfaction to the soul. For this satisfaction is derived from devotional service to the personality of Godhead. So Narad Muni is making it very clear. So we understand that there are different types of yoga systems. I think a lot of you are also taking that Bhagavad Gita class by Kanai Thakur Prabhu. A couple of weeks ago he was explaining the yoga ladder and the different yogas. So there are four main kinds of yogas. Anyone knows what they are? What's the first one, the lowest one? Karma yoga. The next one is?
Dhyana yoga.
And then?
Dhyana yoga.
Dhyana yoga.
And then bhakti yoga.
Then bhakti yoga. And you can go into further breakdown of these. You have Sakam yoga, Nishkam yoga. Even in Karma you have Karam and Vikarm. So there are different levels of the yoga. And if you also read in chapter 12 in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is also telling like, okay, if you cannot do this and do this, if you cannot do this and do this. So it's giving you different options on what you can practice depending on what works for you. So Narad Muni is explaining that yes, by following these different yogas, you can restrain your senses up to a certain extent. And we also practice that in our lives. Anyone here practices yoga, like the normal, physical postures and everything, the breathing exercises? No one does yoga here?
Everyone is bhakti yoga.
There's one person. Everyone is bhakti yoga. That's the best answer. But yes, so we can do yoga, and I also at least try to do it sometimes, if you have the time. But you can do these breathing exercises, you can do pranayama, and that does help. Because after doing the yoga, you do feel, better externally, internally, your mind is a bit more calmer. So all those things are there. And Narad Muni is not saying that that is wrong. But Prabhupada is explaining the purport that by practicing this mystic process of thinking, sitting, meditating and concentrating, like we're seeing Arjun Prabhu doing it right here. He's Getting so inspired, he's starting the yoga already. We can control the senses. But the senses are compared to as venomous serpents. And the yoga system is there just to control them. So there's benefit in doing the yoga, but our great Acharya Narad Muni is saying that it is not sufficient. Because let's say by doing this yoga practice, you're able to control the senses, artificially able to control the senses. As soon as there is an opportunity to indulge those senses with sense gratification, we will take advantage of that. Because we are artificially trying to control those senses. Right? And Narad Muni is saying that by his experience, he says that devotional service to the Lord is more effective and practical than the system of artificially controlling the senses. And there are a couple of points in the statement that Narad Muni is saying. The first point is he's saying that by my own personal experience. So he's telling about his own personal experience of Vedavyas. He's not telling something that he has read or he has heard someone else say. So there's a big difference. We always have that one friend that always tells us that, we'll make all these plans, we'll go here, we'll do this, we'll do that. But when it's time to actually go, he will not show up. We'll say like, no, Prabhu, you should do it, you do it. So they always push you to do something, but they themselves are not experiencing the same thing. So you cannot have that confidence in order to explain how you are feeling. For example, if you keep a pile of sugar and a pile of salt in front of you, and I can give a full lecture on why this side is the sugar and this side is the salt, you will never believe me until you actually taste it yourself. Because they are both looking the same. But as soon as you taste it yourself, then you'll be confident that yes, this is sugar and this is salt. So when we have that personal experience, like Narad Muni is having, then he's confidently able to explain how he felt by practicing this devotional service. Yeah? And the second point that Narad Muni is saying is that devotional service to the Lord is more effective and practical than trying to artificially control our senses. His Holiness Devamrita Maharaj was explaining an example. So imagine there is a person in the temple and he's standing by the wall and all he's doing is hitting his head on the wall. He's just constantly hitting his head on the wall. And if you see this person, what will be your reaction? Hopefully you will try to stop him. Or you'll try to talk to him. That what is wrong with you? Why are you just hitting your wall? Hitting your head on the wall. And so imagine this person is keep hitting his head on the wall and you go and say, no, you should not do that. And he stops hitting his head on the wall. You tell him, don't do that, and you walk away. Now what do you think he will start to do the next day? He will do it again. Because you told him you should not do this, but you never told him what he should do instead. So there is a difference, and this can be practically seen if you have little children in your home. If they're making a mistake, our natural reaction is to shout at them and say, don't do this. So they will stop doing it. But we never tell them what they should do instead. So eventually they'll start doing the same thing. So that is the difference so that is like controlling our senses artificially. We're telling our senses, don't eat any sweets anymore. Or don't engage in material desires. But that is artificially controlling because you're not engaging our senses in anything else. So sooner or later, they will go back to how they were before. Because the key point here is that senses always want some engagement. They're always in search of doing something, and in the service of Lord Mukunda, the senses are transcendentally engaged. They must be engaged, and Prabhupada says, to check them artificially is no check at all, because as soon as we have the opportunity to engage them, we will engage them in the wrong way. And we can notice this ourselves. We all know that we should not be having too much screen time. But right from the beginning in the morning, we turn off our alarms on the phone, And the last thing we do before sleeping is most likely look at our phones. But our mind is so powerful that it will justify that, it is important to look on the phone. We will go on YouTube and we'll say that I'm listening to a lecture. So then it's okay to look at the lecture. But halfway through the lecture, we'll start to scroll. And we'll find some other video that we want to look at and we'll think, I'll just watch for 5 minutes.
Some shorts.
I'll watch 5 shorts today.
That are never short.
They're never short. So we tell our mind we'll watch 5 shorts and it ends up being 5 hours and we're still scrolling through our phone. Because our mind is just looking for engagement and that is how we're engaging it. So as soon as there is an advantage, there are people who say that I never eat sweets. I only eat sweets when I go outside or in the morning, I have to eat some sweets and then at nighttime after lunch. But other than that, I never eat it. Right? So whenever we have the opportunity, the senses will engage in the wrong manner. So that is the meaning of controlling it artificially. And this condition in the purport as well is explained, the difference between controlling our senses artificially and engaging in devotional service. So the example of Vishwamitra Muni is given. Vishwamitra Muni was very powerful sage. And it was said that he was meditating for thousands and thousands of years, and Indra got concerned that if if the sage keeps doing his practice as he's doing it, he will even overtake me. Because there was a pastime when the sage wanted to create his own heaven. And Indra was very concerned. So Indra sent Menaka to seduce the sage. And of course, because the sage was always just doing the Dhyana Yoga, he was trying to meditate without having to control his senses. He did get seduced by Menaka. Later on, Vishwamitra Muni found that this was the practice and the trick of Indra, and he was able to regain all his powers and prowess. But at that point in time, he did get overcome by the desires of lust. Similarly, the example of Haridas Thakur is given. Haridas Thakur, does anyone know how many rounds did Haridas Thakur do in a day? How many times did he chant the holy names?
192.
192 rounds. 300,000 times he was chanting. Tomorrow is Gaur Purnima and you have to do the Japathon. And we try to do 32, 64 rounds. And Haridas Thakur was doing daily 192 rounds. It is not possible for normal conditioned souls like us. And Prabhupada explains that even in the purport. He says, no ordinary person can chant so many times, nor should they try to. Nor should one artificially imitate Haridas Thakur's behavior. There is a prescribed number of chanting that one should do. One should take a vow that, okay, I will do 4 rounds or 16 rounds or whatever rounds, and make sure we just do them with the correct intention and offenselessly. But that is Haridas Thakur. He was chanting 192 rounds every single day, and Maya Devi herself came to seduce him as well. It is said that she came at midnight by the well-dressed Maya, and still she could not induce the great devotee in his trap. So that is the difference that is shown when you're engaging your senses in Krishna consciousness and when you're trying to just do your own meditation by artificially trying to control your senses. Okay? So with that, we can go to our last verse. Okay. Sarvam tad idam akhyatam yat prashto aham tvayanaga janma karma rahasyam me bhavatas jatma toshanam. So now Narad Muni is concluding, O Vyasadeva, you are freed from all sins. Thus, I have explained my birth and activities for self-realization, as you asked. All this will be conducive for your personal satisfaction also. I don't think you wanted to read the purport, but we'll continue. So Narada Muni is saying that Vyasadeva, you are free from all sins. So we should also understand, just because Vyasadeva is asking the question, he's playing the role of a disciple to a teacher. That does not mean that Vyasadeva is a normal conditioned soul. So Narada Muni is also glorifying Vyasadeva in this verse. He's saying you're free from all sins. Vyasadeva is literal incarnation of Krishna, Shakta Vishavatar. Right? So just because Vyasadeva is asking questions, he is not just a normal, ordinary conditioned soul. And this pastime is illustrating the importance of having a guru. So even someone at the level of Vyasadeva needs a guru or a teacher in their lives. In Bhagavad Gita chapter 4 verse 34, we are learning how we should approach a guru or a teacher. Tatvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya udakshanti te jnanam jnaninastattra darshina. Jnaninastattra darshina, because you should approach someone who has seen the truth. And again, this brings us to the point of personal experience. Because these elevated souls have seen the truth, only then they can impart it towards you. So that personal experience should be there. So that is the proper method of approaching a teacher. It is saying just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, inquire from him submissively, and render service unto him. Most of the time when we ask questions because we want to showcase how much we know. A lot of times we ask questions that we already know the answer to. But we think that, he will not know, so I should ask that question and test. So that is not the correct way of approaching a teacher. So they said that whenever you do have a teacher, whether that's material life or spiritual life, even in material life, at work, you cannot demand someone to teach you. You have to ask them submissively. And then hopefully then they will be able to impart knowledge unto you. So that is a proper method of approaching a teacher. And Narad Muni, of course, being the teacher in this scenario, he is glorifying Vyasadeva. And Krishna also enjoys this activity where he was always glorifying his devotees. There was once a pastime where there was a person, he wanted to have 4 sons. And in the village, Narad Muni came, he called on to Narad Muni, and Narad Muni came and Narad Muni asked, what is your issue? And he said, I want to have 4 sons. And Narad Muni said, okay, I'll go talk to Krishna and see when you will get your sons. So he goes and talks to Krishna, and then he comes back. And the person asks, what did Krishna say? And Narad Muni say, actually Krishna said that you're not destined to have 4 sons. So there is nothing, you can do. It is not in your destiny to have that many sons. And the person said, okay, well, it is what it is. But he was a very generous and a charitable person. So one day a sage came to his village, and the sage was asking for, charity. And he was saying that whoever gives me the number of chapatis, the number of rotis that he gives me, that person will get that many sons. And the person thought, well, maybe I should try. So he gave him 4 chapatis. And lo and behold, in some time, he had 4 sons. And then Narad Muni was doing his parikrama again and came to the same village. And he asked, how did he get 4 sons? It was not in your destiny to have it. And he said, no, the sage came and he gave me the boon and I have 4 sons now. So then Narad Muni went back to Krishna again. And he said, you told me that he will not get the 4 sons, or he will not get any sons. And Krishna said, I didn't do anything. But he's like, no, he has 4 sons. Krishna said, that was not me, that was my devotee doing it. My devotee can do whatever he wants because he has that own power. So in this way, of course, Krishna knows what is happening, but in this way, he is using the sage as the instrument to give the boon to the person. So this one might think that, oh well, the sage is more powerful than Krishna. In a sense, it is said that Krishna can only be conquered by his own devotees. But the devotee knows that it is not his own power, it is only the power coming from Krishna. So that is a relationship between Krishna and the devotee. Because as soon as the devotee thinks that this is my power and that is why I'm able to give this boon, then it is all gone. Right? So that is the difference. So Krishna also very much enjoys this activity of glorifying his devotees. And Narada is saying to Vyasa that he is already free from all the sins, and he has explained how to practice devotional service by his own personal experience. But if you read through the scriptures, Narada Muni is the spiritual master of so many great devotees. Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj. But in every scenario, he is using a different tactics for preaching. So when he was preaching to that hunter, Mrigari hunter. So Mrigari was someone that was so cruel that he will kill the animals, but he will leave them half dead. He will not fully kill them, because that is what he found enjoyment in. So Narada Muni didn't go and tell him about his whole personal life story in order to transform him. He showed him what will happen to him after he passes from his body. He showed him the future, that if you continue doing these activities, this is what will happen to you. And Narada Muni even suggested him that, okay, at least just fully kill them. And this is how gradually he changed him. When Narada Muni saw the two trees, Nal Kubera and Manigriva. They were the sons of Kuber, and they were having their pastime in the open, in the river. They were having a shower, and they were not wearing anything. And when Narada Muni came, they still did not stop to pay respects to him. They just continued in their own pastime. So again, Narada Muni did not show them that what will happen to you if you continue doing this, but he actually cursed them. So this is how he taught them in how to come back on track, back to Krishna consciousness. So this is the quality of an expert teacher. They are able to say the same thing in different packages. They're able to say the same thing in a different presentation depending on the audience. And Srila Prabhupada, our founding Acharya, was a master at this. There are so many pastimes of Prabhupada like that. So when he was teaching in America, most of the people that will come to look at hear his class were drug addicts. They were all hippies and drug addicts to begin with. And LSD used to be the most commonly used drug at that time. Anyone knows about LSD here? So it is a trick question. If you say yes, then also it's wrong. Yes. So LSD was the drug choice at that time. And then while giving a lecture, someone asked, Prabhupada was explaining how the spiritual world is. How is it different than the material world? And someone from the back asked, how is actually the spiritual world? Because Prabhupada was explaining things, but they were not fully understanding. So Prabhupada, because of the person who asked the question, Prabhupada responded, the spiritual world is like an ocean of LSD. And then they fully understood, okay, that is where I want to go. So you have to present the philosophy in a way that is understandable and digestible by the audience. And that is what Narada Muni is doing. But the important part is you can package it in a different way, but you cannot modify it. So Narada Muni never modified or diluted the philosophy, but he packaged it in a different way so that it is more understandable to everyone. This other example I'm just thinking with Prabhupada, and this is the type of people that he had to deal with. So he was sitting in the car and there was a disciple, his own disciple sitting next to him, and Prabhupada was having some apples. And Prabhupada ate some, and then he said that you can have the rest, and he gave it to the disciple as remnants. The disciple ate whatever he could, and then after he said, Prabhupada, I'm full, you can take it back. Because they just didn't know. So it is not their fault, they just did not know. So he said, I'm already full, you can have the rest of it, I don't need it. But that does not mean that Prabhupada stopped teaching or preaching. I mean, he converted them, the hippies to happies. So that is how Prabhupada was able to be a quality expert teacher. So in conclusion, we read that Narada Muni explained that due to our attachment to sense objects, to sense gratification, we get anxiety because we are attached to material desires. We do not have to change, and we do not have to artificially control our material desires, but what we have to do is change the direction of them, change the subject matter, so that Krishna is in the center. Yeah? One can control the senses by practicing various types of yogas, and which is good. I'm not saying that the philosophy doesn't say that you should stop doing your breathing exercise and pranayama in the morning. You should do. Because that will also assist in helping you chant the holy names. But the end goal is that you need to be involved in transcendental service of Krishna. So that is the main point. So we just have to change the subject matter. And before I wrap up, I want to talk about a very auspicious occasion that is tomorrow. It's the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Gaur Purnima. I'm sure you've seen the posters on social media. There will be a Japathon in the morning, so everyone is welcome to come for Mangal Arati, and there will be a class as well, and you can really practice what you heard today, where you can engage yourself in chanting of Krishna's name in the association of devotees. Because that is the whole thing. At the end of the day, we just need to engage our senses in transcendental service. And if you come to this temple, there's so many different services that you can do. And if someone is still not able to find the service, Rishabh Prabhu is not there, but please contact him. By personal experience, I can guarantee you he will find you a service. There is no way that he will let you go without a service. And that is his quality. Right? So please do join us for that. And if there's any questions, there's a few more examples we can go through, but if there's any questions, we can go. And with that, thank you. Hare Krishna. If there are no questions, there's a good example again of Prabhupada. Gaur Prabhu has a question, yes.
So my question is you talked about how Narada Muni was able to deliver so many devotees, right? But why Krishna himself, especially in case of Duryodhana, why he was not able to convince? Was it part of this Leela?
Yes, we can say if Krishna was able to convince Duryodhana, then Bhagavad Gita would never have been spoken, right? But it's a very good point. So Narad Muni was able to convert them. That does not mean that Narad Muni has, more knowledge, and Krishna was not able to convert Duryodhana. So first of all, Duryodhana never accepted Krishna as their spiritual master. So a teacher can teach their student, but if the student does not want to learn, then the teacher will not be able to teach. So we see even in our schools, we have a class of 30 to 40 students. The teacher is teaching the same subject matter to everyone. But everyone comes first, everyone doesn't even pass the class. So it also depends on the student how much they are willing to learn. So if you look at that verse, Tad Vidhi Prani Pratena, Pariprashnena Sevaya, so the student has to approach the teacher in a manner, in a submissive manner, where he wants to learn. So that iksha, that desire to learn and to improve must be there. You can have a plate of prasadam in front of you, but if you do not extend your hand to eat it, you will not be able to. So there can be very many reasons, but of course Duryodhana never accepted. And Krishna, he gave him so many chances. Even at the end when he came as Shantidut, he just asked for the 5 villages. But you know Duryodhana's response, he was so puffed up that he said even the pin drop, the land worth from a pin drop of a pin, I will not even give that much. So if the student doesn't have the desire to learn, then it's very difficult. But at that point, you can also say, like when Krishna appeared in the world, he also had a Sandipani Muni. He also went to Gurukul and learned. So it is showing that how important it is to have a spiritual master. Does that help?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's in the text of 35. So you were making a point saying, because the senses always want engagement, they should be engaged in the service or doing any Krishna conscious activities, so whether it's like chanting. But is that on the platform of pure devotional service? Because if we look at, I can take myself for an example. Even when I do service at the temple, I'm not on the platform of pure devotional service. So there's still room for our senses to falter, and there's still room for our senses to not be completely engaged in that activity. So then how do we practically apply that principle given the platform that we're on?
Yeah. So if anyone says that when they're doing service in the temple that their senses are purified, that they are a pure devotee, then Krishna says that one of the characteristics of a pure devotee is that he will never say that he's a pure devotee. Right? As soon as a person is saying that a pure devotee is saying they're a pure devotee, they just fall down. So it is not that, by doing, you can do the service after you become purified. We do the service to become purified. Right? We cannot say, and we hear a lot of people, I think just a couple of weeks ago, I was standing by the bookstore, and it was a Sunday program, and there was a person looking at the books, and he was looking at Bhagavad Gita, and I was getting very excited. I was like, okay, he'll take the Bhagavad Gita. But he was holding it, and then he said, no, I cannot actually take it. I was like, why can you not take it? He said, oh, we're not vegetarians in our house. We cook non-vegetarian food. I said, that's okay, you can still take the Bhagavad Gita, and eventually, by the power of Bhagavad Gita in your home, you will eventually become vegetarians. And he's like, no, first I need to become vegetarian, and then I will take the Bhagavad Gita. And I tried to convince him a lot, but I was not successful. But the point is that, if we are waiting to become purified and then start doing start engaging our senses in spiritual activity, that will never happen. Because that is a process to purify our senses by doing engagements in spiritual activity. So it is like a patient that is saying that, I will start taking the medicine after I get cured. So you need to get cured. You need to take the medicines in order to get cured. Does that help? Okay. Yes,
Prabhu, how do we find a guru?
It's a full 1 hour lecture on that. But I would say, if you specifically look at ISKCON and Krishna consciousness in ISKCON, we have many gurus and Maharajas in ISKCON. And with the help of social media these days, you're able to access the content of all these gurus very easily. So the first thing would be that, you should try to see where your own Krishna consciousness is, what mood you have in the Krishna conscious movement. So there are different moods, even in Krishna consciousness, right? So there's some mood where, some people are very much in that leadership and managerial role. There are some people who just want to sit and do Sharanam and Kirtanam. So Maharajas also, they have different moods. So if you look at like His Holiness Radha Maharaj, his mood is very mellowed down. Right? Even when you listen to his lectures, they're in a very sweet tone. You look at His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj, his mood is very much like, strong. In that sense, he's very, we must do this and this and this and this has to be like that. So every guru also has different moods. And if you go back in our lineage, if you go in our parampara, we look at Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was said to be a living encyclopedia. He was so intelligent that he would just recite everything, all the verses. A living encyclopedia. And who was his guru? Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, it is said, by material standards, he was an illiterate. He was an illiterate. But still, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur chose him, or Gaur Kishore Das Babaji chose him as his disciple. So we have to see that who we find the inspiration from, where we want to go in our spiritual life, in our Krishna consciousness. Try to access those gurus, and also you should take consultation from senior Vaishnavas that are close to you in your personal life, so they can also recommend. Because people they know you, they're aware of what are your faults and what are the things that you want to improve on, and based on that they can also recommend. But before looking for a Diksha Guru, we should start to find a Shiksha Guru. And one can have multiple Shiksha Gurus. So once you're able to find the Shiksha Guru and you're able to progress in Krishna consciousness more, then you're able to see which mood, what is your nature, and how do you find fulfillment in Krishna consciousness. Because not everyone finds fulfillment in Krishna consciousness by doing the same activity. For example, if you put me in the kitchen, there won't be any prasada. So people have different qualities, and based on that, then you're able to explore. But it is not something that you can find in a day or in a month. It is something that you have to constantly look and then start listening to their lectures, start reading their books if they have some, and start getting inspired by them. Anyone else? Okay, so if there are no questions, thank you. Hare Krishna. Should I stop and end the